Good morning, everybody, and welcome. This is a Delivering Growth for SMEs workshop around developing key partnerships to win new contracts. So we're part of the UK SPF Supplier Ready program, and this is done through Brent Council, who are sponsoring this, with Brand and Business Support doing the delivery, and we are doing this as part of our Fit to Bid activity. So I'm Tony Mulvale. I'm one of the advisors who is based in Ealing. I work in and around Ealing and Park Royal, and I've worked on other programs such as peer networks in the past. I'm also a senior lecturer at the business school in the University of West London. And one of the things we talk about when we look at key partnerships is how do we get from solo, which is cheetahs being the fastest land animal, who hunt alone but have a very 50-50 success rate in terms of their chase. Sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. It's a coin toss for them. They can only sustain their chase for 200 to 300 meters, and if they do win a prize and find some food, it often is taken away from them by some of the larger cats, the leopards, and the lions who are on the savannah. So hunting alone, but not very successful. Whereas we look at some of our sustainable partnerships, the African proverb is about, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. And elephants are a good example of that, where we have herds of elephants who have collective memories about watering holes, best places to eat, and know their way around the landscape that they live in. And by working as a group, they're able to come together and guide and support each other and learn from that. And an example of that, as well as the Sheldrick Trust in Kenya, which rescues orphan elephants and raises them over a sort of 15-year period. And eventually those elephants reintegrate into the wild. And it's an interesting way of looking at how you can sort of nurture an infant who's suffered a traumatic loss of a parent or a herd back into the wild through that process. And it's a learning process, it's a growing process. They don't just send them out into the jungle on year 15. They actually have a whole integrated process where eventually these adolescents become comfortable enough to go out into the savannah, meet other elephants, understand the wild, but will still come back from time to time for support until they're fully mature and fully wild living. So it is an example of how elephants working together communicate and support each other in their growth. And that's really what we want from our key partners, are people who can help us along the way with our growth. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. Brand as an organization has been delivering business advice and support for over 15 years, started back in 2010, has built up a number of partnerships over time with a number of organizations. Some of them you'll recognize here, Brent Council being one, Ealing Council another, OPDC. So we recognize the value of the partnership approach, and working collaboratively with partners enables us to do better as a whole. Today we're going to talk about partnerships, what that means, what's the aim of a partnership, how do we exchange value between the partners and ourselves as business owners, and where's the value? What can the partner bring that we desire? What do we get that makes a difference to us, and how can we create value through that transfer of activities? So what do we need in a partnership? So one of the things we think about with partnerships is tools. We've got our quality management system, ISO 9001. Sometimes as a partner, if we're working with HS2 or some of the bigger organizations like Mighty at Heathrow, or with the NHS, they want us to have that as a qualification. Sometimes we also need to have ISO 14001, which is our environmental approach. And we also have the new ISO 18001, which is now the 80,000 series, health and safety. So oftentimes when we're looking for partnerships, we need to have these tools to demonstrate that we've got a good way of running our business, that we understand our environmental impact, and that we have health and safety processes in place, particularly where we are working on places like construction sites, public buildings, other spaces like that. So all of this is important to us as part of that partnership. And the interesting thing about the ISO 9001 is just looking at what they call their total diagram. Is like what comes in as inputs, we process them, and we have outputs. And we're talking about what do we do with the tools that we have, with the inputs we have, the suppliers, what is the purpose of that? Who are we dealing with and how are we doing that? And by having that documentation in place, it demonstrates to potential customers, could be purchasers, this is what we do. But equally, when we're dealing with our suppliers, it tells us what we want from our suppliers. And that's really important because it enables us to understand the specification that we need our suppliers to work to, or our partners to work to. So while you think that ISO 9001 might be a very large system with lots of documentation, by having it in place, it really does give you that opportunity to understand more about what you want from your partners. And so that's what we bring together, that collaboration based on common understanding. And initially, when we're looking at the business model canvas, we're talking about feasibility, desirability, and viability as being the kind of three lenses we look through the canvas. We also starting to talk about adaptability as well. If our product, our service is not desirable, no one's going to buy it. If it's not feasible, we're just not going to be able to make it happen. And that could be as simple as having staff to do the work, tools to do the automation, or a way of making something as a manufacturing process that enables us to deliver our product. And then it needs to be financially viable. One of the challenges I find when talking to business owners is around input costs. Clients, I have done some research and have an idea in mind that maybe this product is going to sell for £150. But when you look into the input side of this, you find that the input cost is £120, £130. That means that the product is not financially viable at that price point. So you need to understand the inputs to your product or your service to make sure that the price that you're putting towards your customers is going to keep you going. And we also need to have purpose. This is the fifth lens that we have now is purpose. Talking to the Minister for Procurement yesterday, one of the key things that they're thinking about is social value. So what's the purpose of what we're doing as a company? If we're working with partners, understanding the social value that we bring to a contract is also a critical part of that. So why are we bidding for this work? What's our purpose in doing that? And that applies to our suppliers as well. What's the purpose that we want to have when working with our suppliers? So it becomes much more critical to us to have that purpose in mind as well. So the people, planet, and profit are three parts of a whole, and we're focusing very much on the purpose part of this as well. So when we're looking at the social value element of this, and this, as I said, is something that's becoming more important now with the new government and the new Procurement Act that came out yesterday. Social value is a much more desirable component of the overall procurement package. Whilst there used to be an economic element, now we're looking much more at the sort of economics being part of this, but social and environmental all contributing to that in a specific way that says this is how we add value. We're doing better economically, we're doing better environmentally, and we can demonstrate the social impact we have. So when we're looking at the business model canvas, we need to make sure that we understand what does that mean. Some things can be as simple as paying a living wage. Outside of London, there's a minimum wage that we need to pay, but inside London, there's this concept of the London living wage, which is about £13.85 an hour. That demonstrates that if we are paying that amount to all of our employees and that we're investigating or getting assurances from our supply chain that they pay the London living wage, then we're adding social value, because that adds to the bottom line of these people who now have money left over at the end of the week that they can put away and have some savings in the bank. So we also look at carbon footprint, local hires, apprenticeships, ethical working. All of this is about investing in the community, saying this is what we're doing to make the community a better place. So if we're hiring local, that means we're giving good jobs to local people. We're not outsourcing roles to other locations, other countries. If we are building apprenticeships, that's giving people who want skills the skills that they want and the roles and opportunities for the future. And apprentices are not just 18 to 24-year-olds. Apprentices can be started at any age. The oldest apprentice that's age started was 61 because you have time to do the apprenticeship and complete it inside that timeline. So apprenticeships are available. They're another way of building up the skills in your workforce. If we talk a little bit about partnerships, so at the moment we have the Old Oak Common Build. That's a joint venture between Balfour Beatty, Vichy and Sintra. They are looking at the different components of a strategic construction for that station and managing the different packages, and they each bring a different element to that. We can also look at our supply chain, our preferred tier one buyers. Again, at our Meet the Buyer event in March, we'll have a number of tier one buyers that you can come and meet and talk to and see, how do I get to be part of that supply chain? There you've got a kind of management contractor, subcontractor type of relationship where you're doing work on behalf of the main client, which is, I say, different from a strategic alliance where 2 companies or 3 companies are working together to deliver a whole project. We have co-opetition where we work together, and examples of this are motorcycle frames and motorcycle engines. We have a motorcycle frame maker, and we have an electric motor producer. They're 2 different companies, but they work together to produce motorcycles that are electric, that together as a whole you can sell the product. So there's things around making sure that the frames fit the motors, that the motors provide sufficient energy to drive the wheels to make the motorcycle work. So there are some elements of that, and then we can do joint ventures to develop the new products. And this is again where we come into this motorcycle example, where 2 companies come together and create a 3rd company to deliver that. So they started off working together, saying we could, do a bit, you do a bit. Now that we've advanced the model and we've got a viable product, let's create a joint venture where both companies get equal benefit from that. And that's much more of a kind of legal arrangement necessarily than just 2 companies agreeing to work together. So they're the types of partnerships we have, and we can use them to do more than one company working on its own. I'm just going to pause there for a minute and just give you time to absorb that. Amy, do we have any questions in the chat?
No, I don't think so at the moment, but everyone should have access to the webinar chat. So if you do want to drop a message either directly to one of us or to everyone, feel free. Although I think we might have one in the Q&A.
Right, yep. I can see that now. Strategic alliances. Okay, so Janet, yes, strategic alliances. So this tends to be where you're saying that, and the Balfour Beatty one and the Vichy and Sintra one is where they have differing elements that they bring together for a construction project. And so Balfour Beatty bring in their knowledge of the processes around building and maintaining systems. And you're looking at saying, okay, so what are these key things that we can bring to this to make this happen? And that is making a kind of like an agreement that we are actually going to sit down and work together and make this happen as a strategic partnership. So it's a much more upfront conversation with people about the project, what we're going to do, who's going to contribute, what components of that project, and how are we going to work together to make this a success. So it's very much a case of thinking long term as well. So for example, the Old Oak Common build, so I was going to say, Jen, so the Old Oak Common build as an example is a major infrastructure project, and these 3 companies have said, working together, we can do this, but the build started 5 years ago and is going to go on for another 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how the building progresses. So those companies have sat down and said, we really need to think about, okay, how do we do this for the long term? So what you're doing there, and we can talk about this when we come on into the kind of the model around forming partnerships, is think about who do you want to work with and how long do you want to work with them for, and is this the right partner for me to be working with in the longer term? What's the business that you run, Janet? In the meantime, I can see that Michael's asked a question, joinery company in London, how can I bid for contracts? So Michael, there's a number of portals available. There's Proactus, there's Compete For, which is where all of the haters to work at Old Oak Common. is being sourced through. In fact, I know that they've got something that's come out recently. So if you we have your details, Michael, so I can send you an email with some of the packages that are being sought after in the older common build. There's also other portals like Proactus. Ealing has Atomus as its portal. So each of the boroughs will have differing portals that you can go to log in and register to look for work in those particular spaces. Others, if you're doing joinery and you want to say build kitchens, might be that some of the buyers, for example, Berkeley Homes and George's, they are looking for contractors who can build kitchens, build units in bedrooms, that type of activity. So it depends on what sort of activity you're looking for. But I would say start to think about who needs your product and where would they be based. Does that help, Michael? Okay, great, thanks. And then Janet, as a recruitment agency for single parents and ethnic minorities, again, similar advice to you might be, are there some employers out there who are not maybe aware of what your recruitment service offers and the type of people that you are bringing to them? So again, it's looking to see other employers. For example, up in Park Royal, you've got McVitie's, which is a large employer up there. You've got Garden Studios for creatives. You have Dina Foods, who manufacture Middle Eastern food. So there are different types of employers of a certain size that you might be approaching them and saying, okay, if I think about this company as an employer, would they be somebody I could work with at a partnership level? Another one that might be of interest to you is Katsoulis Brothers, who run Cypressa Foods as a brand just next to the Ace Cafe in the industrial estate there. It's about identifying who those businesses might be and are they the type of business that might be a suitable partner for you for your recruitment. So that's one way of going through that and saying, okay, what sort of people do I have on my side? What sort of roles are they looking for? Where are those companies that are out there, and how can we work with those companies to provide that social value? And then it's also about your value proposition. So how is the company better off employing the people that you bring to them, Janet? They're the kind of questions I would answer. Right, thanks, Yara. I can see you're a bespoke furniture maker as well. Cool. Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, so Janet, if you're in Brent, then there is an opportunity to get one-to-one business advice and support. If you're based in Ealing, we still have spaces available on our Ealing Supplier Ready program for one-to-one support as well. So contact us afterwards and we can see if we can find some time with you outside of those boroughs. There's other support available. I hope that helps. If we move on to outcomes, and this is a little bit about what we're talking about here, is in terms of optimization. So Lynette's part of development. I'm just trying to read your message there. If there are art installations as part of public developments, then that should be advertised through the contract in some way through the portal for you, Lynette. But if they're companies like Barclay, Homes or St George's or some of these more kind of private contractors, it may be having a conversation with the relevant company, sort of site representative. So for example, with Barclay Homes, there's a particular person in their Southall build, but if it's St George, there's somebody else. So again, it's a matter of finding some of those individuals. Michael, if you're in Ealing, email us afterwards and we'll find out some time as well to meet up. I think Namish, for the kind of ambient food product, things like this, there can be, but I think food manufacturing in the public sector is quite challenging as well. So sometimes it's about looking at who the providers are who've won the contract and seeing is there anything that you can provide that would enable that that company to benefit from the products as you're supplying to them. Don't tend to see many sort of public sector ambient provision. Transport minibus, Dr. Jaya, So there are opportunities for those contracts. Some of that might be under staffing, might be under recruitment. So you can look at that again on the portals. There are lots of different contracts available on those portals as well that can be found if you're searching for them. Compete for. There'll be transport options as well. I think there's Hats is one that does a lot of transportation that I see around sort of Ealing and Brent. But you need to look through those contracts and say maybe some of those main contractors have won the transportation contract might want something to be subbed out as well. Okay. I think Neil, for you, looking at some of those contracts and the consultancy space for energy and telecoms for procurement, I think it's again working with the Proactus and other websites like that where you can register for the type of work you do and look for those sorts of contracts. Alternatively, again, look at what's going on broader term. So, for example, Brunel are running a food net zero program in Park Royal. It may be that one of the things to look at there is, okay, what is Brunel's program? What is it doing? Is there a way that you can support them in the delivery of that program? So it's about finding the individuals running that, like Professor Jeffrey Rogers is running that one. So what's he doing to make that happen? And I think there was a question as well around Lynette and the public art commissioning. Yeah, it does feel a bit like that at times. I know, for example, in Brentford, when they were doing their build, that Simon Inc. did a lot of work to paint some of the boards around the hoardings around construction sites. That was something that was built up based on many years of local relationships through the space. But that's not to say that you can't build those relationships and have those conversations with the providers. And Sedone with your handmade lampshades and soft furnishings. Okay, it depends on what you would like to provide through the contract process. My thought would be that potentially you're looking at ways to connect potentially with some of the builders. So, for example, the home builders, there's a lot of regeneration work going on with people building homes in Park Royal, in Southall, in other parts in Brent. It may be that some of the connections there might be to meet the buyer and talk about what you bring to the situation, because some of those buildings are furnished as well. And Namish, there are some opportunities around technology development, that sort of activity. Look to the contracts that are out there, and potentially some of this might be writing letters to councils as an expression of interest to say what you do and how you can help them. And I would say, look at what the council's doing. For example, are there projects that they have that they're talking about on their council website that you think you could help them with? And do they have any commissioning procurement coming up? So we can help you with an expression of interest for that sort of partnership as well. Okay, with our partnerships as well, outcomes, and this is maybe one for Namish, is that kind of optimization activity. You can see that the council is trying to do a digital transformation. You can bring those digital skills that will transform those processes and optimize activity. We can also generate intellectual property and resources as a consequence of what we're doing. There is economies of scale. So by working together, we can do more and at a cheaper price if there are more of us working together in a partnership. And one of the things the councils and procurement teams are very keen on is the reduction in risk. So they're looking at financial risk, they're looking at longevity for companies, they're looking at ways that they can't guarantee, but ways that they can at least mitigate the risk in terms of financial failure, loss of the supplier, that sort of thing. So this is one way in your bids that you can demonstrate that by working together, we form a stronger partnership. So there's that piece, and then there are reasons for partnering. meeting customer expectations, engaging with customers. Some of us helps to deliver product that's more competitive or ahead of where we're at. So two companies working together can also come up with differing ways of working, and then moving forward processes or solutions much more effectively. We particularly talk about supply chain partnerships as well, and I've got some examples that I can talk through with you as well about those. And then we've got the financial partnerships as well. So that can sometimes be, I've got the technology and the know-how to do this particular project, but I need some funding to do that. So I might form a partnership with a funder who can provide me with the funds I need to build the project. That could be a capital injection into my company, could be a loan, or it could be a kind of ongoing revenue sharing opportunity where the company said, yes, we'll underwrite this, but we expect to get so much of the revenue back as a first year, second year activity to ensure that we get some extra value for our money. But they may be giving you funding, or they might be giving you time as funding, so time with their people supporting you on the grounds that they'll get back revenue later on in the process. So it's quite a risk-based approach to it, where you're getting people saying, we'll give you the time now for a share of the revenue later. That's another way of scaling up as a partnership. We talk a lot about the business model. Has everybody done business model canvas? Know what the business model canvas looks like? In our business model canvas, we have that kind of left-hand side. As I look at it, that's be your right as you see this, but that left-hand side of the canvas is about the activities, the processes, and the partners that we want to engage with, and how do we make that happen. So we very much look at who do we want our key partners to be, who are our key suppliers, and partners and suppliers can sometimes be the same person. What are the resources they want, and what are the activities we want our partners to perform for us? And so thinking about your business at the moment, have you got some examples of successful strategic partnerships that you've got in place? Okay, Janet, so you're working on your social value element as well. And for our tech companies, that could be, if you're building, for example, sales platforms, Pipedrive might be a CRM that you choose for your client. So Pipedrive is going to be your partner in this, and you might be building up bespoke workflows, bespoke fields in the CRM to capture the way you work with your customers. So Pipedrive can be very much a sales-driven tool, whereas you might be wanting to look more at marketing and that as a tool. So you might choose to use Zoho as your partner for a marketing tool rather than Pipedrive. So there's differing tools that you might choose, but they are tools, and they become partners with you because you're choosing that piece of software as part of your business. Yeah, teaching activity. I would have to understand that a little bit better, yeah, because I think you put a very big number in there, say this is what the saving would be, but I think adult education budgets have been cut dramatically across the board, and it's something I know that Eileen and Brent are working on, kind of bringing back and funding more effectively. But if you've got ideas about how they could save that money, and you've got a worked model that says this is how it's going to generate that saving, then that's something that definitely could be put together as an expression of interest for a council. So there are some strategic partnerships examples. The other thing we talk about is potentially manufacturing. So it could be component suppliers, could be your logistics suppliers. If you've got an e-commerce platform and you're selling online through Shopify, you might have Amazon as your third-party logistics provider, or another provider. So they're going to be your provider who actually hold your inventory, keep it in a box, and then deliver it to customers. You could also have industry associations could be another partner. So, for example, if you are in the transport business, then there are transport organizations you can join that will give you, I think it was the NCDA, it's the acronym that comes to mind for transportation, or NTDA for transportation and drivers, where you can benefit from sharing knowledge in those industries. Institute of Directors is another one where you're using the business organization as your network to build up your connections in the industry. So again, you could be saying, well, I'm going to join the interest in that Institute of Directors because actually what I want to do is meet other people who have similar ideas to me and have businesses that are growing, and maybe there are people I can work with to do that. Other organizations could be West London Chamber or West London Business, where you join them as a member and they can facilitate introductions to other businesses that you're looking to meet and work with. So there's differing ways of doing that. In the interest of time, I'll just keep moving along, but part of that is to say who is critical to our business. I've invested in Pipedrive. I've now got a lot of data in Pipedrive. I've got a lot of bespoke processes and fields built into my Pipedrive sales activity. Yeah, if you contact Amy afterwards with your details, we can get in touch with you and have a look at what the process might be to do that in more detail, if that's okay. And what sort of partnerships suit our needs. So for me, I've got some technology background, so I can play with Pipedrive and I kind of know what I need to do to make it work. Is that something that's good for me? Well, actually, possibly not, because when I look at my adding value in my role doing this, I might want to outsource this to somebody who can do it when it needs to be done, rather than me trying to do it late at night, on weekends, or in between bits and pieces. So again, we need to think about how we're going to leverage that partnership for our business purposes. So in our exercise, we think about, okay, so what's the value that we're looking for in that partner? So for me, I'm looking for a technical person who can continue to invest in and build up my my Pipedrive processes. So I'm looking for somebody who understands Pipedrive, understands how to automate the movement of data from along my sales process. So I engage with the customer, I have a conversation. The prospect says, yes, we want to work with you. I then put a proposal together and send it out to the customer, and the customer says, yes, that's okay. Then we agree on the start date, and we agree on what we're going to do with that. I'd like to capture all of that in Pipedrive, but to build and implement and maintain those processes over time, I really want somebody else to do that, because it's taking time away from me, and that time is my money. So I'm looking to say, well, I'm getting back 100 hours of my time through this automated process. What's that worth to me at my hourly rate? And so therefore, what does that partner offer that supports that design value? So the value there is that they can take on my Pipedrive development, they can build all the flows I want, and they make sure that it's done to the quality I expect and inside the timeline that I expect. So that's one way of building up those partnerships. So think about your partners, think about what they want from you or what you want from them. And then what do we offer our partner? In my example, I'm just offering them money. I'm offering them to say, I'm paying you for this service and you're delivering a service to me, but it's a valuable service to my business. Sometimes you can look at swapping some of that activity. So it might be that if in the example of the upholsterer, it might be, well, actually, if this company provides the raw materials, I'll build the chair, the soft furnishings, the couch, whatever it might be, the curtains, and we might do a revenue split as a consequence of that. That's one way of doing it, but ultimately we might just pay them for the goods. So you need to think about how are we leveraging those partners and what are we getting from them. If it's the social value as well, we might be thinking, what social value do we offer to our partners? So we can see that by working together, we're going to create a very good set of jobs for local people, So the social value in that is knowing that we're working with local people who are moving out of either unemployment or low paid roles into better paid, higher value roles. And that's what the partner might be looking for us to do as well. And that's kind of the recruitment example where we're recruiting people, but we're adding, social value to our partner. And what are the activities, what are the resources we need to do that? So for recruitment, it's about finding and identifying the right sort of role for people. It's about finding the right person to fill that role. It's about making sure that we have gone through an assessment process to get that person to fill that role. What do we need? We need people, and we need a clear understanding of the requirement and what needs to be done. With manufacturing, with our components, is about, okay, so I need to have so many components available at such and such a space, and this is my ongoing excuse me, this is my ongoing activity around ordering the parts in, getting them on time, and then transforming them into the product that I need for my customer. So the key activity could be the ordering, inventory management, and pricing of those components, and understanding what I need in order to have the stock I need when I need it. So this is ways that we can collaborate with our partners. Yep, Sabrina. So again, just drop your email into the chat, or email Amy, who's given you her email there, and we can organize a follow-up with you after the call. And then return on investment. What's the expected outcome in this? And always, when we're working together as partners, we must focus on the return on investment. Is this going to be profitable for both parties, and are both parties going to be satisfied with the outcome of the conversation and the transfer of those values? So me as a consultant, if I'm talking about organizations where I want them to grow and prosper, I want to make sure that my clients generate 5 to 10 times their revenue over a 2-year period. And I expect as a consultant, I get paid to do that. So that's how we generate value. And we're saying, this is what we're going to do for you. This is what we expect from you. And we expect to generate this type of outcome for you. That's one way of looking at it. Another way might be with the recruitment example. We're expecting to bring these people in. They're going to have good jobs. The return on the investment for that will be potentially long-term employees who are invested in your organizations, who want to stay and do well for you because you've given them that opportunity. So that could be an outcome. And if we think about recruitment, cost of recruitment is, for a bad hire, approximately 1.5 years of their wage is lost for every bad hire you make, because you spend time recruiting, you spend time thinking about the job, you offer them the job, you give them the training, and then they leave. You've probably spent about 1.5 years of salary. So for somebody on sort of a £30,000 salary, you're looking at losing £45,000 per person. So by recruiting well, you can demonstrate to the recipient company that they're better off by this amount for every successful hire that you place. So that is how we think about that return on investment. So always think about it from the customer's perspective. If you are looking at mental health services, you're saying the cost of an employee who needs support for mental health is this much money. It could be 2 years of salary by the time you tend to their needs, make sure that they're well looked after, and hire somebody to replace that person to do the work while they're absent. That becomes more expensive as well. So always, when looking at the expected outcome, think about what's the outcome you want, what's the outcome your partner wants, and how do we make sure that that return on investment is there for us, that we both benefit from the conversation. So as we said, and just summarizing this, why are we partnering or subcontracting? And that needs to be an upfront conversation with your potential partners. Why are we doing this? But equally, once we are partners, there should be that regular check-in to say, is the why we joined up to do this particular project or joined up as partners still valid And are we continuing to add the value that we want to each other? There needs to be that ongoing discussion to make sure that we are aligned with what we're doing. And so, yeah, okay. Just checking to see if there's anything else. So I think just, and this is to Janet's point about how can I obtain the kind of partnership rationale before meeting the companies. I think you can do a certain amount of research with these companies. If you have a case study where you can say, I have worked with this company and this is the benefit that we brought to that company as a result of the work we did, then you've got that case study that you can bring into the meeting. But it's not until you really sit down with your potential partner and discuss how they are going to be better off by working with you that you can really start to understand their needs, their issues, and understand how your work is going to benefit each other. So I think, Janet, whilst it's good to get to a point where you've done the research, understood the company, and identified potential pain points and had case studies that you can demonstrate this is how you're better off with us, there's still going to be those situations where you will have to have that face-to-face meeting with them to understand how are you better off dealing with us. And that is always, I think, a conversation that needs to be had in the process. So that's a view of how we exchange the value between those two business models. So in Janet's example, she's demonstrating to businesses that by hiring the people that she's identified, they're going to be better off in the long run because they are going to have staff who are loyal and dedicated and trustworthy, who will make sure that their business runs smoothly. On Janet's side, she's getting the compensation for that as payment, but also adding to the social value to say we have taken people from unemployment, low value employment to good employment and long-term stability. So that's partly money, partly social value. So there's more pieces to the puzzle. Always these things can be complex. We should have a terms of agreement in place to say who's involved, what are the expectations of each other. This is something that should be done up front, and you will benefit from this in the long term if you've got those terms in place, you've got the reporting structure, you know how long this is going to work, you've agreed on what success looks like. So what are the expected outcomes? When do we expect to have that happen? How are we going to report on this as well? So who needs to tell what by when? And quality control and audit. How can we demonstrate that we said we did what we were going to do? Where's the evidence for it? And always signatures, although these days we can automate some of that. We can use DocuSign, for example, to get an automated signature. But we can also put in writing in emails to say this is the agreement. That is also something that we can have. But that agreement, it's like anything, whether you're hiring a person, buying a product from a shop, or working together as partners. We need to be really clear up front. What are we going to do? When are we going to do it? Who is doing what? And what do we expect of each other? And what does good look like? Because that then sets us up for success. If we haven't gone through that formal process at the beginning, it becomes much harder later on when things aren't going well to say, are we meeting the terms of the agreement we put in place at the beginning? And that becomes very expensive as well later on down the line if you don't have a formal agreement. And a lot of the feedback, if it goes badly, is about who could have done and what wasn't done, and that sort of conversation. That's when lawyers get involved, and that's when it gets very expensive. So I always recommend to people that you do this up front, because it's not going to stop things from going wrong. There's always a risk that something will go wrong, but it means if something does go wrong, you've got in place evidence and structure that supports the situation, that protects you from further damage. So that's something to keep in there as well. Supply chain, we talk a lot about different activities in there. What do we need? Where are our channels? What are the facilities? How do we reduce waste? Transformative capacity. These are all the sorts of things that we look at with collaboration and partnership. So there are differing topics that you can investigate further in that space. And in terms of the process, this is what I was talking about with Janet before. It's like, what's the business challenge? Do your market research, understand why you should partner with that person and how are they better off partnering with you. Build up your partnership canvas that is available to you as an artifact. You can download that from Strategizer, or you can get copies from us. Think about who those partners might be, talk to them, agree on the structure, so design how you're going to work together, and then try a couple. Does this work? Is this going to work? Do we need to do something different? Prototyping is about trial and error sometimes. So we test and experiment things, and once we're good and understand how it works, we launch the process at that point. So that's a way of doing that sort of activity and thinking about it. And then these are our key questions. Who are our key partners? Who are our key suppliers? Where do those resources come from? Who does what? What do our partners do? What do we do? And this recording will be available as well. So you can go back and look at this if you want to refresh your memory on what we talked about here. So we have our partnership canvas, and we look at what does the partner bring? What do we bring? How do we bring it together to add value to each other? And then we have an action plan. I would say take a moment now to write down the 2 or 3 things that you're going to do today or this week after the call. And make a list. Amy will be familiar with what I've been doing, where we have a kind of set of targets for the week, and we have the 3 things we're going to do this week to meet those targets. And I find that's a really helpful way of focusing on achievements for the week, and then being able to tick that off the list and say, yeah, we've done that this week. We've managed to succeed with this activity, and we've moved our business forward. So we have another webinar in a couple of weeks' time, 18th of March, talking about pitching for success. So how do I approach the buyer when I'm at the Meet the Buyer event? And then we'll have the Meet the Buyer event itself on the 20th. So it works in your advantage to come to that webinar on the 18th and just think about, how do I actually pitch for success? What do I need to tell them? And when I'm meeting with the buyers, time is of the essence. It's very limited. Some of you may have tried formal networking organizations who have like a kind of 30-second elevator pitch, that sort of activity. Think very much in that space of, what do I need to get across in the first couple of minutes? I'm talking to this person so they understand who we are, what we do, and demonstrate that you've looked at the potential buyer and understand how you can solve problems for them. Sometimes you might not have that information. It's okay. You can go to them and say, we are doing these things. Could you talk to us about the specifics of what you would need in this space? But you need to do that preparation in advance. So we have our Meet the Buyer event. Brent Council will be there, Heathrow, NHS, the HS2 Old Oak Common team will be there as well. That'll be Tom and Manish and his team, who are based up at Old Oak. Morgan Sindall are a facility management provider. They are in Hammersmith, and I think Brent now. Waits Residential Builder, Barclay Group, St George, all in the building space. So if you're looking at making cabinets and doing that sort of activity, they're good organizations to come to. If you're looking at technology and digital services, the NHS might be one. HS2, a lot of different opportunities there with the packages they have in their organization. Brent has a wide range of procurement opportunities, and Morgan Sindall does as well. So yeah, make sure that you're there to check in with them. If you're in Brent, that you've signed up and you've got an appointment to meet with those buyers. Sidoni, if you've got products and you can bring them with you, yes, it always helps to kind of have something people can put their hands on. Brochures are nice, but sometimes they don't get to the kind of nub of what you're doing. But I'd advise against bringing in like large objects. You know, something that's maybe a bit small and hands-on might be better than something that's large and bulky. Or you're doing lampshades and soft furnishings, but yeah, a small lampshade or something like that might be nice, but gives people an idea. But I would also have great photos of your products placed in the settings that they're going to be used in as well. hands-on, of course, you get to feel the quality of the product. So we have our Supplier Ready Summit. That's the 20th of March. So yeah, be around for that, and then we'll have our skills workshop as well, where we'll be able to watch this on the Brandon YouTube channel as well with our UK Supplier Ready program. If you're in Brent or you're in Ealing, there are some one-to-one advisory opportunities available in March. We're almost at the end of February, so there are slots available to the end of March. So feel free to contact us for further information after that. And then with our expression of interest and our supplier development guidelines, there are opportunities for learning how to build and write and work with those particular templates. And there's also Tracy at brandon.co.uk. If you're based in Brent and you're looking for a one-to-one advisory session, we can help you with an expression of interest to a local authority and developing some of those bids for winning bids for buyers in the private sector or in construction and infrastructure. So that is pretty much the end of our presentation for today. It's been really interesting to meet with people and learn more about what you're doing. If there are any questions, Amy's popped some details in the chat, so you can email Amy and myself, or you can go to Brandon's Bid to Bid or brandon.co.uk and find out more about what we do. Yep, so that's the end of the presentation. So if there are any questions for another minute or so, then that would be happy to answer those. But if not, then you're free to enjoy the rest of the day, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Michael, contact me for the Ealing one. I think Amy popped my details in the chat a little earlier, so you can click on the buttons to the right and you can save the chat. There's 3 buttons to the bottom right where you can see that, and that'll be saved in in a Zoom folder. And there's Sabrina Bell. So you've got amy.yang@westlondon.com and myself, tony.mulvale@westlondon.com. So great. Thanks very much, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the day, and I look forward to hearing from you soon.